So, thanks for coming along. What we're going to do today, I'm going to give a model short presentation, about 10, 12 minutes, something like that. And for the presentation competition that you just heard about next door, the competition is to give information about Japan, the Iki, the ethos, the spirit of Japan. So I'm going to do a model presentation like that today, but based on Scotland, because I'm Scottish, instead of Japan. So what I'm going to be doing, I'll be presenting as if it was a real presentation, so watch my body language, watch my gestures, my eye contact, my movement. Also watch the slides. On the slides you'll see that they're very visual, there's no bullet points, not much text. The information is coming from the speaker. The slide is just to provide a visual to help the audience remember. So, let's get started. Good afternoon everyone, thank you for coming. My name is Rab and I'm Scottish. So today I'm going to talk to you about Scotland, Scotland's culture, what makes Scotland special for Scottish people. In the talk I'm going to cover three main areas. The first area I'm going to cover is looking at the ingenuity, the invention and the pride that Scottish people have in the area of the natural beauty in Scotland and how we use it. Second, again I'm going to look at those three things, ingenuity, invention and pride, looking at animals and how they're represented in art in Scotland. And lastly, I'm going to look at sports and culture and how they help to make up Scottish spirit and Scottish identity. So, let's get started with the natural beauty of Scotland. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play you a video here. And in the video, there's a number of places in Scotland. I'm going to talk to you about them, as you can see. This is the island of Skye. And the island of Skye has these really weird, unusual rock formations that we don't really find in many other countries. Iceland has some things like that, Scotland has some things like that, but most places don't. So you can see really unusual rock patterns there, and they're so unusual that many movies have been made there to simulate other planets, because they look really strange and really weird. This is a valley called Glencoe. And hundreds of years ago there was a massacre. One group of soldiers massacred many people from another clan, another group, including women and children. So people think if you drive or walk through there, you can hear and see the ghosts of the people who were murdered. And also Scotland has many old castles, ruined castles, broken castles, plus we have some castles that are still being used today. And many of the castles are also in very beautiful, very powerful spots. This again is the Isle of Skye. These are the Cuillin Mountains. Actually that's the name of one of my children, it's called Cuillin. And next to it we can see the loch, the lake in English. Now this is Edinburgh, sometimes known as the Athens of the North. This is kind of like Scotland's Kyoto. Many old buildings are there, it's the ancient capital, we have castles, churches and things there. And again, a very, very beautiful, very scenic city that Scottish people are usually proud of. This is Elan Castle, and that's Loch Ness. Those of you who have heard of Loch Ness, maybe because of the monster, Nessie. We'll talk about that later when we get to animals. But that's Loch Ness, where we think the Loch Ness monster, Nessie, lives. The Highlands has lots and lots of streams, water, rivers, and it's very clean. You can just put your cup there and drink the water. It's one of the cleanest waters in the whole of the United Kingdom. So many people, when they go hiking, they like to take bottles of water from the stream back to their house because it's very, very clean and clear. You can get an idea of the water here. Super clean, super clear. People swim in there as well. We go camping next to it there. In Scotland, there is no law of trespass, so people can walk, hike and camp anywhere, in any of these spots. And the size of Scotland is about the same size as Hokkaido. And the number of people is about the same number of people as Hokkaido. any city at all, if you travel 1 hour from the city, you can be somewhere like this. Scotland has a lot of countryside, not many cities, so very easy to get to really beautiful natural beauty spots like this. And Scottish people like to go there to think and to drink. You'll take beer or whiskey, sit in the countryside, look at the scenery and try to get some ideas for what we're hoping to do. And later, you'll see some of the ideas that Scotland and Scottish people have brought to the world. We'll cover that at the end of today's presentation. But you can see here, these are the kinds of beautiful scenery spots. No buildings, no trains, no roads. You barely even see airplanes. Such a really beautiful, unspoiled country. And we think that's what gives a lot of our ideas and passion, the fact that that's what we're surrounded by every day. So this is Edinburgh Castle, which is in the middle of the capital city. This would be Scotland's equivalent of all the temples in Kyoto. We have the castles. We have so many of those. You can see here the perfect reflection in the water. Very, very, very clear. And this is Glencoe again. This is the road view. That's the place where we think you can see the ghosts. Because this is a valley, and the enemy soldiers blocked off both sides of the valley and started killing people. So some of the men and women had to try and climb the mountains to get out. It was hundreds of years ago, and that's why so many of them died, and their spirits were supposed to be trapped there. And this is the bridge to the Isle of Skye we saw earlier. And the bridge is very new. Before we had the bridge, we needed to use boats, small boats, to get to the island, and it was very difficult to get there. But when we were there, we could see this kind of scenery, this kind of beauty, so people appreciated how difficult it was to get there. Now, Scotland also has lots of wildlife. We can see we have deer almost everywhere. Now this brings us on to the second part of the presentation. Finish. Animals and art. So this here is what's called a Celtic cross. These are very common in Scotland and Ireland, but this is not the Christian cross. The Christian cross has the vertical part very long and the horizontal very short. This is a much older cross from the Celtic religions, the Druidic religions, and the cross with both parts being the same size, that's a very old symbol of the sun. And these kind of crosses you can find a lot in Celtic art in Scotland and Ireland. And we have special animals that you only find in Scotland. These are Highland cows, long hairy cows, and they're unique to Scotland. You can see them everywhere there. Deer, as we saw before in the video, we can see everywhere. We have these cows, they're called Aberdeen Angus. These produce the best beef in Scotland. This would be like Kobe beef for Japan. Aberdeen Angus beef would be for Scotland. And we have these really, really big horses called Clydesdale horses. They're so big, most people don't ride the horse. We use them for pulling wagons because they're such big, strong horses. And we also have these guys. Most people know these dogs, golden retrievers. What most people don't know is golden retrievers started in Scotland about 200 years ago. So about 4 or 5 years ago, on the 200th anniversary of the golden retriever, many people in Scotland who had golden retrievers brought them to the building, the land where that breed started. And there were 222 golden retrievers in that field. I have one here in Japan. They're very playful, they cause a lot of trouble. Can you imagine how much trouble you would have with 222 retrievers? We also have cats in Scotland. These are called Scottish folds. They have special kind of folds ears. They are also originated in Scotland. And there's Nessie. Probably you've seen Nessie before. Now Nessie's an imaginary animal, but it's not the only magic imaginary animal from Scotland. We have other ones we call kelpies. So in Japan you have kappa, you know, the little turtle. Scotland has the kelpies. and they appear quite a lot in artwork in Scotland. And the last one we have that's a kind of magic animal is our national animal. Most countries, the national animal is a real animal. America has the golden eagle, Russia has the bear, China has panda, Japan has crane. Scotland's national animal is the unicorn. It appears on our money, it appears in our logos. The unicorn is the national animal of Scotland. We're an unusual country that we have an imaginary, magical animal as our national animal, and it appears in artwork. So moving on to the last part then, we have sports and culture. So golf is a game which started in Scotland. Curling is another game which originated in Scotland. This game you probably don't know. This is a game called shinty. It's a little bit like field hockey, but much, much, much older. And you're allowed to bring up the stick, you're kind of allowed to fight with people. And that's a very old Celtic Scottish game. And many years ago, some Scottish soldiers who played this game were sent to Canada for a year. And in Canada, there was ice and they couldn't play. So they invented ice hockey. So ice hockey is actually based on the Scottish game of shinty. Now, we also have a special kind of Matsuri, a special festival in Scotland called the Highland Games. And in the Highland Games, we have a number of special events which later became part of the Olympics. So this is one of them called the shot. Now that's not a shot put, the metal from the Olympics, that's a stone. And they're a very rough and unusual shape. And this was a very old sporting competition to see how far people could throw them, that in the modern world, many of these events from Scottish Highland Games were copied and put into the Olympics. So this eventually became the shot put in the Olympics. And we can see the technique is very, very similar. Just this is bigger than the Olympics one and heavier because it's made of stone. And we can see everyone who's doing these events, they're all wearing the kilt. So in Japan, you have the samurai wearing the hakama. In Scotland, you have the Highland warriors wearing the kilts. So this is also something that's similar to the Olympics. The Olympic has a ball with a chain, they call it the hammer, and that's also taken from this. And that's an even heavier stone. Now, in the Scottish Highland Games, besides these stones, we actually have a hammer throwing competition as well. But in the Scottish Highland Games, as we'll see in a moment, the hammer is a real hammer with a big, long handle, which makes it very, very difficult to throw, as we'll see in a moment when he finishes this. So here is the hammer, but it has a very long, solid handle, different from the Olympics. And the handle is very long. And we wear these special shoes with a spike, so you can dig the spike into the ground, so you won't slip when you're throwing the hammer, because it's very difficult. And now in the modern world, they put climbing chalk on their hands for a good grip. But in the olden times, we would take fruit juice to make our hands sticky for holding the hammer, for throwing. And you can see how difficult this is. He's digging his shoes in so he won't slip. And you have your back to where you're throwing. Like that. You see how long that handle is, makes it very difficult to throw. And most big cities have these kind of festivals. This one here looks a little bit like the high jump. You see the bar. But the idea is we're trying to throw the weight over the bar without hitting the bar. And we keep moving the bar higher, then we use a heavier and a heavier weight until eventually only one person can do it. And the last of the events is the most difficult. We're going to see in just a moment. He's about to do the last one, and then we'll move to the very last event. Tossing the caber. Now the caber is a big log, and you have to stand it up, and you have to hold it like this. Then we have to run and throw the log so it goes end over end. But it must also go straight to 12 o'clock. If it goes to 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock, not so good. 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock, really bad. If it goes straight to 12 o'clock, that's the perfect score. And again, we keep using bigger, heavier ones till some people cannot do it. And that is incredibly difficult to do. So I'm about 188 centimeters. I'm about 90 kilos, and I'm too small for these kind of events. Most of the people who do this are really, really big people, over 100 kilos. Some of them are over 2 meters tall. It's very, very hard. That would be a perfect score. It's went straight to 12 o'clock. So these are the traditional kinds of sports that we would have had in Scotland. But we also have football. Now this here is a Scottish advertisement, a CM from TV about beer. If I turn up the sound, you can hear it using Japanese music. You probably know this song. So what they did, the TV company and the beer company asked normal Scottish people, do you want to be in a beer CM? None of these people are actors, they're all normal people who are not being paid, but they wanted to be in a beer CM. So they turned up in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, when the streets were empty, to make the beer CM. And football in Scotland, everyone loves football. We're crazy about football. So we have skins and colours. Colours keep on our clothes, skins take off the top of our clothes to have skin colour. And these are all normal people who turned up in the morning to be in the CM. Wait till we see how many people turned up. The TV company and the beer company were expecting 20, 30, 40 people. Wait till you see this. That's how many people turned up to be in the beer CM, just because they love football and they love beer. And last one, sports, is rugby. And this is also very famous in Scotland. And we can see here, we have New Zealand, and they're very famous for doing the haka. Very strong, very powerful warrior culture. And you can see they're doing the haka, and the Scottish guys are like Scottish warriors. They're stripped to the waist, they've got tattoos, and they're wearing the kilt. And traditionally, in Scotland, when the soldiers, when the warriors are wearing the kilt, just like the kimono, we don't wear underpants. And that was designed to scare the enemy. So we made this kind of funny TV CM about that to promote the whiskey. So, moving on to the last part. Scotland are proud of all these different things, the natural beauty, the art, the culture, the sports. So because of that, Scottish people have invented a lot of things. Most of us now use a bicycle, and we pedal the bicycle. The very first bicycle in the world with a pedal was invented by a Scottish man. The very first tyre in the world with air inside the tyre was invented by a Scottish man. This kind of ash, dirt, Tarmacadam road, invented by a Scottish man. This kind of machine to move boats up and down from canals was invented by a Scottish man. The steam engine train, invented by a Scottish man. The very first telephone, Alexander Graham Bell, he was from Scotland. The first postage stamp was invented by a Scottish man. TVs, John Logie Baird, a Scottish man living in America. Penicillin, the medicine, What? A Scottish man. Fleming. The first refrigerators, invented by a Scottish man. Flushing toilets, invented by a Scottish man. Vacuum flasks to keep our drinks cold, invented by a Scottish man. Single malt whisky. Irish people invented whisky, then the Scottish made it better by producing single malt whisky. So we can see all these things that Scottish people have given to the world. What would you do without Scottish spirit, Scottish ideas? You would miss many of those things. So that's what I want to say about Scotland. My presentation is now finished. Thank you for listening. And then I would take questions. Question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. That's the kind of model presentation that you should be doing with your team members, but about Japan, Japanese spirit, Japanese culture, ideas, etc., etc. So, any questions on any of that? You will notice all of those slides, no bullet points. All of those slides, not many words. The words were coming from my mouth as I was speaking the information. The slide is just a visual to help people remember the words that I'm actually speaking. That's how we give a modern 21st century style presentation. In fact, Google have actually banned